Hello everyone and welcome back to the digital design sketching course where we will develop our 2D design of the manned drone even further. As I said in the previous video, you shouldn't be too satisfied too early with your design. Keep pushing yourself to go further in exploration. Only then do you get to find designs that you couldn't have come up with at the start, and that is where the cool stuff is. In this class, I'll continue my search for a design that really appeals to me and also fits the design briefing best. I wanted a design that communicates eagerness, motion and presence. So those are the characteristics that I want to explore even more. I realize that you may never have thought about design as a visual language before, so you will not be judged on that part. But I do think it's a very interesting subject that I want you to become aware of and maybe trigger you to dive into that matter yourself, parallel to this course or later on. I can't stray from the main subject too much, but I will refer to it sometimes and explain some basic things about it. Now let's start this exploration. This time I'll explore my designs with shapes and volumes instead of lines only. I'll play with shadows and light to define my shapes and transitions to get a better feel for the designs. This almost always gets me to the more advanced shapes as well. It's also a good way to break habits if you're stuck in the same shapes. I'll use basic techniques for this. Let me show you how. First, I want to copy my conclusion of the first class to a new A3 document. If you've kept your file organized, you have placed every design in one single group. I could easily just duplicate that group into another document. I just right-click my group and select Duplicate Group. I then define to which document I want that duplicate group to go. In the new document, you can now clean up the group a bit before we continue with it. I delete some layers that I don't need anymore. I then pick a solid brush, the brush number 30 without opacity sensitivity. Also pick a medium gray in the swatches panel or in the color picker window. With this brush and color, I can quickly block in the basic shape of this design on a new layer. I don't need the underlay right now, and it'll be only in the way here. So pick up this gray layer and place it above the underlay in the layer hierarchy. Don't delete the underlay because we will need it later on. I continue filling in this shape with the medium gray base color. It doesn't need to be very precise because we are still in exploration mode here. The goal is not to make pretty pictures, but to develop the design further. If you want, you can quickly retouch some edges with an eraser though. Make sure you name your layers so that you stay organized and you can easily navigate through your file. This is really important. You can rename layers by double-clicking its name and then typing the new one. Don't forget to save your work regularly as well. I save as a different file as my first exploration so I don't lose anything. This next step is the main technique of this part. I pick a polygonal lasso tool and make a rough selection of a certain area that I want to shade. This selection doesn't need to be perfect, but it needs to be just good enough, and most of all it needs to be quick. Please watch the video about selections if you're unsure about how to use these tools. It's in the Photoshop Basics folder on Sketch Drive. I then pick a light gray color from my swatches and pick a soft brush from my brush presets, which I then make very large. Within this selection, I define light reflecting the surfaces of my design. I then inverse my selection and then define the shadow areas with a dark gray. I keep using the same brush. Now you see that it is no longer a flat design, but there are 3D shapes emerging. I continue to make some basic selections and repeat a few times. Keep in mind that you want to explore the rough shapes only. Stay away from the details, that is really for a later phase. As a final touch, you can add some highlights on a new layer. I use the same brush I always use for sketching, only now pick a white color. Make sure its transparency is controlled by the pressure sensitivity of your pen. You don't want solid white lines, but a transparent white. That is key here. Highlights almost always appear on fillets and corners, so stick to those only. This highlight layer is placed all the way on top, even above the line layer. This was only the first one, and it was a design that was already defined by the old lines. This is a really quick and valuable step in my design workflow. Now you can really go a level deeper in your exploration without it taking a lot of time. The next step is to throw the old design out the window basically and explore new things. I duplicate this group and move it to a side here. I want to alter this group a bit first. I keep my silhouette the same as it was. That is the one thing that is pretty much defined by now, and I stick to it. But I erase all my inside lines and start with a clean slate again. Before I continue, I duplicate this group as many times as I can fit on my canvas, so I can quickly continue my exploration and get in this flow again. Now I pick a standard black sketching brush again and define a new design within my old silhouette. This will give me new insights and ideas. Don't overdo it and stick to large shapes only. Don't add details yet, please. It's essential that you wait with that. Now repeat the process of making rough selections with the polygonal lasso tool and playing with light and shadow with a large soft brush. Repeat until you find a design that you really like. I found mine on the second to last sketch on this page, but it may take you multiple pages. Alright, now as you can see here, I really play with light in a way. I'm not thinking in lines, but I think in volumes and how to connect them together. How would the light be bouncing off those shapes? Wherever I use a light brush, it communicates as light reflecting off a surface there. And wherever I use a dark brush, it looks like the light isn't reaching that area as much. Since most of the time light comes from above, it communicates that highlighted surfaces are angled towards the sky and shadow surfaces are angled towards the ground. You can also use cast shadows. They are the shadows created by other parts or elements blocking light to hit a surface where it would normally reach. These cast shadows communicate that a surface is pushed inwards and another element creates an overhang there. So basically you can say that a shadow surface pushes the surface inwards, making the volume narrower, and light surfaces pull the surface outward, making the volume larger. So instead of just sketching abstract lines, you are now pulling and pressing surfaces to define your shape. It is more of a three-dimensional way of looking at your designs. It also makes you think about shape transitions, because not everything you sketch is possible to make. For instance, you can make a crease in a surface, and then you can even make that crease change direction. That will create a fold in the material in the real world, so you have to sketch it as well. On a sketch you can get away with much, but you have to look at that as a critic. Think about transitions as if you had to build that surface yourself. Is this even possible? If your surfaces look like they actually could be produced, your design as a whole will look more realistic as well. Finally, the highlights you place communicates the sharpness of edges. A blurred highlight communicates as a soft edge, and a thin sharp highlight communicates as a sharp hard edge. A double highlight line communicates a larger radius fillet. Play around with these elements a bit and try to understand what they communicate. Again, sketching is a visual language. You are describing your shapes to someone else, and they have to understand what you mean. So what you sketch has to match the references people have built up their entire life in the real world. You see that all of these designs are very different from each other, but the silhouette is exactly the same. There is so much to explore here. You maybe thought the design was done after the first class. The design is probably never done, you just stopped the process somewhere. You'll see that this design will still develop and change, even when I'm well on my way in making the final rendering of this course. And still after that, if I were to build a 3D model of it, it will still change. Did you see how quickly you can produce variations with this workflow? You have to dare to throw out what you like by erasing the inside lines, and push yourself to come up with even better things. That's why I called this step Kill Your Darlings in the outro of the last class. Finally, you can upgrade this page a bit by adding a gradient to the background. I just use a very soft brush and a nice color. I draw a line while holding the Shift button on my keyboard. This makes sure that the line will be perfectly straight. Add some notes to your conclusive design to communicate what you think about it and why you chose it. I hope I've pushed you a bit to make you see that you need to produce a lot to get to the cool designs. I never would have thought of my conclusive design in only a few sketches. It takes time and development. That's why exploration is so valuable. If you're inexperienced, it will take you a lot of time, but keep on going and you'll learn a lot. Look at other designs that you like and try to analyze why you like it. Can you get similar results, or can you even go a step further? It takes time and effort, but most importantly, you need to be driven. Look for real motivation, then it's not work, but it becomes what you really want to do. So, now you know how to further dig into your exploration. It's mainly about not being content with your work too soon and always wanting to improve. In the beginning, you have to look at how others do it and analyzing designs that you love and copying them a bit too. After that, you can develop your own designs and reach more of your potential. Remember that it's an ongoing process. Thank you for attending this class. In the next video, I will show you how to sketch the first rough perspective construction and how to set up your canvas for that. Hope to see you then.